Hi guys, I am not sure what's true or false in this video. I am just here to take the gossip, scandal, and tea from online, from yesteryear, from word of mouth, from books, from magazines, from anywhere that I can find it, and I balled it all up and I tell you guys a story. Now, let's get to it.
Hi everybody, this is Ashley with Ashley Says So, and I am back with another Old Hollywood Scandals video. And before we get started, I would like to give a shout out to some of my members. First, we have O. Henry 2, Tysika or Tysikia Dixon, Miss Virgo 69, Elaine Terry, Jessica Smith, Lamar Pope, Marianne Thomas, Carla McNeil, Brenda Bunch, and Tatiana Starks. Thank you guys so much for becoming members of my channel. And if you are a member and I have not called your name yet, do not worry, do not fret. I call out names with every single video. This video today is brought to you by Veronica Rainey, and this is going to be the Old Hollywood Scandalous tale of a very, very talented but not well-known child star by the name of Little Miss Esther Jones. And since we are going to be talking about Little Miss Esther Jones, I know a lot of you are probably wondering, Ashley, why is your outfit not like Betty Boop's? Like Betty Boop didn't have no pin in her hair. To be honest with you, I tried everything in my power to make my outfit not like Betty Boop's, because I feel like when people talk about Little Esther Jones, that's all they connect her to is Betty Boop, and it really overshines her as a talent and as a person. So I tried to make myself look like Little Miss Esther Jones. The necklace was probably a little too much, wasn't it? So let's go ahead and get into it. This is the Old Hollywood Scandalous tale of Little or Baby Esther Jones. Let's get to it. Esther Lee Jones was born sometime between 1918 and 1921 in Chicago, Illinois. Her mother's name was Gertrude and her father's name was William. And I'm not exactly sure if they had a career in show business before Esther was born, but most signs point to yes, most likely they did. And I say this because no sooner than baby Esther opened her little baby eyes that her parents put her on the street corner to start performing in front of crowds. And actually, when she did start performing, most records say that her parents became her managers. And let me slip this in real quick too. Although today we call her Baby Esther and she is well known as Baby Esther, it is said that back then when she was actively performing, her name was really known as Little Esther or Lil Esther. Now, even though it was Esther's parents who pushed her to perform, her talent came naturally. It was really God-given. Nobody had to teach this baby anything. And as soon as she did get in front of those crowds, she wowed the crowds. They cannot believe that this little girl was performing at the level that she was performing. In fact, she was doing so well that word started to travel around her local town where she was at, and a lot of people would show up on the corner just to watch her perform. And because this was the case, when a Charleston contest came into their town, little Esther was pushed to perform in that contest by not only her parents, but the local community. Everybody supported and wanted this little girl to perform in this contest. And when she got in the contest, baby Esther got up there and did her thing, Charleston all over the place, and she won that doggone contest with ease. I mean, she blew everybody out of the water, just like her community knew she would. And might I add, at this time, this baby was only 6 years old. So when I say she was a big deal, she was, because she won this contest competing probably against other adults and other children. And she's 6 years old. Most people knew that she was on her way to stardom. And if you are wondering what it was that made little Esther stand out amongst other child performers or amongst all performers in general, y'all, this girl was a master at singing. She was a master at scatting. She was a master at dancing. She was even doing acrobatic. I mean, her little tail was just up there jumping around and jigging and, you know, doing spirit fingers, just doing everything, and the crowd absolutely loved her. But back to the contest. Esther won and everybody is cheering and shouting and having a great time, and while that's going on, this one guy is like, I can get some money off of this girl. And I'm just being honest, that's the way he was thinking. This guy's name was Lou Bolton. Now, even though Lou Bolton was obviously looking for money, little Esther did indeed benefit from this also, because Lou Bolton had connections. In fact, he had a lot of connections, and these connections her parents did not have. So Lou Bolton took over managing little Esther. And as soon as he started managing her, it took him no time flat to book her first big performance. And that was in a Chicago review called Opera versus Charleston. Little Esther does spectacular in this performance, and soon word is getting around about how great this tiny little performer is. And because word was getting around and getting around fast, Lou Bolton was able to book baby Esther in several big cities. Of course, there was Chicago, but then there was Detroit, New York, Toronto, and even more cities after that. Little Esther was really on a roll. But there was this one night, though, that little Esther was in the nightclub, and she was just on stage dancing and, having a great time. And then at the end, she probably did her little, "Remember me to Herald Square." Whatever she did while she was walking off the stage, her little tail walked smack dead into a police officer, and little Esther was in trouble. But her manager, Lou Bolton, and her father, William, were in even more trouble. Do you know why? Because Esther was a minor, and supposedly she was not supposed to be performing on stage at this nightclub. Now, thankfully, the law took it easy on Lou and William, and all they had to do was pay a fine, but still, they got in trouble for having this baby on stage. Fortunately, this incident was just a bump in the road for little Esther. It did not dim her light, and she continued to perform, and her popularity was growing more and more. But even though she was getting more and more popular, little Esther had yet to really burst on the scene. And what I mean by that is that, yes, she was known as a talented performer, but she was not known as a celebrity. See, here's the thing. Although Esther was a master at scat singing, everybody was scatting. It was a common thing amongst elite entertainers. So what she was doing, although it was impressive, it was not unseen or unheard of. And either Esther, her mother, her father, or Lou Bolton, somebody in the camp felt the need to change that. They felt Esther needed to do something, to add something that would really make her stand out amongst the crowd. And then one night when she performed at a nightclub called the Everglades Club, she went on stage and she mimicked Florence Mills. And Florence Mills, for those of you who don't know, is basically Josephine Baker before Josephine Baker. She was the tippity top when it came to elite entertaining. She actually was supposed to be the first black superstar instead of Josephine Baker. Florence Mills was so big, as quiet as it's kept, Josephine Baker actually wanted to be like Florence Mills at one point in her career. But Florence Mills tragically died a very early death. But that's saved for the Florence Mills video. So back to this story that we're actually talking about. That night, baby Esther went out to mimic and imitate Florence Mills. And Florence Mills, who of course was a master scatter, she had her own way of scatting. And even though scatting is a series of nonsensical words, Florence Mills had actually created her own verbiage for her scatting. Instead of doing something like la ti di da do da de, ta da lo ba di da do da de, I don't know how to scat. Florence instead would do something like tootie toot toot wah toot 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 tootie toot toot wah. But it was her own way. Nobody else was doing it like that. And if they did, people automatically knew, okay, this came from Florence Mills. That is basically her way of scatting. So that night before baby Esther went on stage, she was rehearsing and she was doing Florence Mills tootie toot toot wah. And that's when somebody got the bright idea for baby Esther to make up her own verbiage when she scattered. And she did. And it is said that that night when she walked on stage at the Everglades nightclub, it should have been a night that was recorded in history, because that is the very first time baby Esther or little Esther walked out on that stage and said boopity boopity boo wah wah wah, boopity boop boop wah 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 boop. And after she finished, a deep hush fell over the crowd. And baby Esther just kind of stood there, and suddenly the crowd went wild, went crazy. I mean, hooping and hollering. It was enough to lift the roof off the place. Y'all should have been there, honey. I mean, baby Esther did her thing, and they loved it. And word started going like dynamite, just boom, everywhere. Oh my gosh, y'all got to see this little girl. Oh my goodness, you got to listen to the way she scats. Oh my goodness, she say something like boopity boo wah wah wah. I don't know how to say it, but oh my goodness, you guys got to see it. Craziness everywhere. Baby Esther was flaming. I mean, she was on fire. And at this point, she was only 7 years old and quickly making her way up into being a celebrity. Finally, with her newfound fame, she found herself being booked almost everywhere. And in 1928, she was signed for a small talking short by Moviefone. Unfortunately for us, though, this movie never actually came out. I don't even think it ever saw the light of day. But it didn't matter too much to Esther and her camp, though, because see, now fame was calling her name, and it was calling it very loudly over in Europe. And so she, Her mother, I don't know if her father went, but I know that she, her mother, and Lou Bolton packed up and went over to Europe. And when she got over there, she performed for the masses. She commanded her audience's attention with her sweet little innocent but peculiar way. And she exploded as soon as she got there. I mean, just poof. Everywhere. She was invited to perform for kings and queens, and if she was not performing for royalty, she was performing for other aristocratic families. And I'm not talking about these people would come to the theater and see her show. Of course they would do that too. No, I mean they would send little Esther a private invitation to come to their home and entertain them or entertain their guests. She was really flying high. She was doing big things. As a matter of fact, this little bitty girl was commanding $750 per week. That is a lot of money for 1928, 1929. Are you kidding me? Oh, baby, she was super wealthy. And with all of this glory, all of this money, all of these achievements, little Esther's name as a dancer was moving higher and higher up the ranks. Now people were actually calling her the miniature Florence Mills, the miniature Josephine Baker. She was riding a wave of pure fanfare, pure adulation, especially when she performed in France. When she got to France and she performed at the same exact venue that Josephine Baker had first performed in when she got to France, all the French people fell in love with her. They really appreciated the fact that she could capture that same innocence that Josephine Baker had when she first hit the stage. They loved experiencing that all over again. Little Esther knew that she was rocking everybody's world. Her mama knew that her daughter was fly. I mean, they knew it, and if they didn't know, they found out when Vogue magazine printed a whole write-up, and I do believe gave her the cover page of their magazine. So as you can see, things were going quite well for little Esther. I mean, they were going even more well than what she or her family could even imagine. And now that she was a star, somebody had to start doing too much and messing stuff up. Lou Bolton started acting up. Turns out he was one of them folks who didn't know how to deal with fame, child. Demanding too much, talking too much, acting like it was because of him that little Esther achieved all this fame. But it didn't matter. While he was sitting up there running his mouth and wilding out, little Esther and her family was sitting up there looking at him just like this. And after he was done, they opened their mouth and they said, "You're fired. Bye, Lou." Now, fortunately, even though Bolton was gone, the show did not stop, and baby Esther continued touring and continued traveling and continued to amaze everyone she came across, and all of the money and everything kept pouring in. And even though I'm sure that she didn't get to keep all of the money, they did allow little Esther to have some money. And so she was just running around like a child would, joyful and cheery and buying everything she wanted to. "Excuse me, sir, I want that doll." "Hello, ma'am. May I have those stockings?" "Well, howdy, mister. May I have those?" "No, you may not have nothing. Now get your little pickaninny tail out this stall, you hear me?" Yes, honey. Baby Esther was in Stockholm, Sweden. And I know she was surprised as everything that somebody over here in Europe that had treated her so kind, you know, she was welcomed everywhere. She was so surprised that somebody was treating her like that. Well, turns out she was trying to eat in a restaurant that was owned by a man named Brunda Thompson. And Brunda Thompson was born and raised in America, and he had immigrated over to Sweden. But just because he had immigrated does not mean he let go of his American values. And unfortunately, at that time, his American values told him to tell little Esther that she was not welcome in his restaurant. Well, honey, let me tell you, I'm guessing his rejection brought little Esther to tears, and child, he shouldn't have done that, honey. Baby, as soon as the first teardrop dropped, Brunda Thompson's life went straight to hell. The Swedish people were in a uproar. They could not believe this man had rejected this child, and they hated him for it because they felt like, sir, we understand you're from America, but you're over here now. We don't treat black people like that. We don't do that. We don't do this embarrassing, we don't serve you and all that kind of stuff. You should have left that little mess over there. And they ended up wreaking havoc on Tompkins' life. I mean, even Swedish officials and dignitaries even stood up for baby Esther. They even said this treatment is unacceptable. We will not have it. And if I'm not mistaken, I do believe that Brenda Thompson tried to do an apology or something like that. I'm not sure. But whether he did or didn't, it didn't matter. His restaurant got closed on down because nobody was coming to eat there anymore. So I know I've already told you over and over again how much these people loved Esther, but that really shows you just how much she had conquered Europe, just how much she had these people like putty in the palm of her hand. And from here, you all know exactly how the story goes. Come on, guys. It's the same way every time. When it's this old time period and a black entertainer goes over to Europe and they conquer Europe. You know what I mean? Everybody loves them. What happens after that? They want to go back to America and they want to conquer there too. And here's the thing about that. I'm not a political person and will never be a political person. I just stay out of politics. But I will speak the truth. Some, if not most of all black people love America, have always loved America. It's just America has not always loved black people back. And unfortunately, baby Esther, as well as other black entertainers, lived in a time when it was blatant that America did not love us back. So in or around 1932, 1933, baby Esther comes back to America. And first she goes to South America and she tours there. And I think amongst the places that she toured was like Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, Buenos Aires, and once again, she proved to be a major, huge, spectacular success. Now, she did cause a little scandalous stir while she was in South America, and that is when a reporter asked her, you know, how is it that you haven't been lynched? You know, how can you be successful and you're from America? You know, they're burning and lynching black people there. How has this not happened to you? And baby Esther answered, it's because I don't tour in the South. I stay away from southern states. And it kind of caused a little stir, but in the end, she was telling the truth. The child was telling the truth. So, you know, people just let it go. And it was a good thing that it was let go because soon she was done with her tour in South America and she returned to North America. And when she got home, she quickly found that she could not carry a show by herself. And this was a huge slap in the face for baby Esther as well as her mother. This child just came from Europe where people were basically bowing down for her, only to come home and can't even really book a show by yourself. You have to be on the bill with somebody else. But it was what it was. The people were just not interested in her like they were over there. But thankfully, she still did get some shows and she still toured because Cab Calloway came to her rescue and she was able to perform with him. Sometimes in his nightclub and sometimes when he went on the road, he would take her. But after this, her performances got less and less and lower. But unbeknownst to Esther, the reason that she probably wasn't getting any gigs, and I'm not sure if this is the reason, okay? This is just me saying this. But the reason that she probably was not getting any gigs is because there was another young singer singing and doing exactly what she was doing. Now, this singer couldn't necessarily do the flips and kicks and acrobatics and things as well as little Esther, but she did have one thing down pat. And that was the scat singing. And not only did she have the scat singing down pat, she had the boopity boopity boo wah wah wah, boopity boopity boo wah 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 boop. And as we all know, the first person that is recorded doing the boopity doopity boo scat singing was baby Esther. But this singer who is doing it now, her name was Helen Kane. And although Helen Kane was going all across America and getting all of these gigs, baby Esther and her camp supposedly never heard of Helen Kane. That is until now, because see, now things were about to get very shady, very shisty, and very, very messy. In 1930, an animator by the name of Grim Natwick introduced a cartoon. And this cartoon was an anthropomorphic dog with droopy ears, and the dog used to sing. And what did the dog used to sing? You guessed it, boop boopy doop boo wah wah. Sooner or later, the animator figured that the dog was not catching on. So instead, he turned the dog into a young woman. And this young cartoon woman is who we know today as Betty Boop. Now, by 1932, the cartoon character Betty Boop was a household name. And so Helen Kane sees this cartoon and she's looking and she's like, wait, hold on, wait a minute. And she's like, okay, wait. That's me. And so when she saw this, she filed a $250,000 lawsuit against Max Fleischer and Paramount Publix Corporation for exploiting her image. And outside of the way the cartoon character looked, her main reason for lawsuit, she said, was because of the boop-bop-be-doo wah-wah, and she said that was hers. And after she filed her suit, Helen Kane just basically sat back and just waited for the money to roll in. You know what I'm saying? She didn't have a worry or a care in the world because she knew she was going to be able to prove her case. She's been singing this boop-bop-be-doo wah-woo, and the cartoon character very obviously looks like her, so you know what I'm saying? She just chilling, waiting for her doggone money. But see, what she should have known is that when you go up against big corporations, big studios, big wealthy people, baby, you got to come ready, full blown, all the way in the game ready. And she did not. So the trial opened in the New York State Supreme Court. There was no jury present. It was only the judge and the defendant and lawyers and all of that good stuff. No jury. Okay. So the corporation, the studio, starts off by calling their voice actresses to come to the trial and testify. And so Helen Kane's lawyer gets up there and he's talking to the voice actress, asking the voice actress questions, you know. And while she's answering, she's just like, oh, poopy doop, yes, you know, stuff like that. And so Helen Kane's lawyer is like, why are you talking like this? Oh, I always talk this way. And so he's like, wait a minute. So you telling me this the way you talk at home? Oh, yes, indeedy. And it's actually on record that she said this. Yes, indeedy. I talk like this at home. And so everybody's giggling in the courtroom because they're like, lady, come on, man. You obviously lying. And so Helen Kane is like, really? Like, this is what they're trying to do? Oh my gosh, I got this case in the bag. And then somebody walked into that courtroom and wiped the smirk right from her face. Lou Bolton. Lou Bolton stood right on that stand and said, no, Helen Kane did not invent this boopity-doo-wah-wah. You know why? Because I taught a little Negro girl named Esther Jones, and she was the originator of the boopy-doo-wah-wah. Baby, Helen Kane could have fainted in her seat. She was white like she had seen a ghost, because Lou Bolton further stated that the very first night, way back at the Everglades nightclub, the very first night that little Esther ever performed the boopy-doopy-doo-wah-wah, he said that Helen Kane was in the audience that night. He even said that after baby Esther was done performing that, Helen Kane came backstage to meet him. Now, although Helen Kane jumped up and called Lou Bolton a liar and said that none of that ever happened, this put a huge dent in her story, because whether it did happen or not, whether she did meet him or was at the club, and it was later found out that Lou Bolton probably had lied about that, said that Helen Kane was never in the audience, no matter though, it still showed that somebody else was doing the boopy doopy wah 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 before she started it, and that somebody else was little Esther Jones. And then to wreck Helen Kane's credibility even more and to put a final nail in the coffin for her, Max Fleischer came back to trial with a soundy film short that showed baby Esther Jones, or little Esther Jones, singing 3 songs in 1928. And the same 3 songs that she sang in that film, Helen Kane had also sang during her career. And when this came into evidence, it was pretty much over with. The judge ruled in favor of the animator and the studio, and Helen Kane did not get a dime. Now, it is later said that Max Fleischer and the studios admitted that they did indeed model Betty Boop off of Helen Kane. But even though Max Fleischer supposedly admitted this, this still does not put to rest the rumor, or maybe the fact, depending on how you look at it, that Betty Boop is in some way based off of baby Esther. Because if Betty Boop is based on Helen Kane's material, and Helen Kane took some of, if not all of that material from baby Esther, that in turn means Betty Boop if you take Helen Kane out of the equation, is based on baby Esther, at least in some ways. Now, there's a lot of cheering and a lot of joy when people hear about that whole case and they found out that, yes, okay, if you remove this woman, it is basically based on baby Esther and she was the real Betty Boop and all of that kind of stuff. Yes, that may give somebody a sense of pride, but really there's no pride or happiness to be found, because even though they used baby Esther to win that case, everybody on the winning side walked away with their pockets fatter except baby Esther. She was still somewhere at this time basically scrounging for gig. In fact, I think the trial finally ended somewhere in 1934. I believe it was May or something like that. I think baby Esther was down somewhere like Louisville performing. And even though she was only about 12 or 13 years old at this time, this performance would end up being one of her last. And although we kind of get the want to kind of point fingers and say, she didn't really get the chance in America, because white folks didn't really support her and this and that. But sad to say, when it comes to little Esther, it wasn't only white folks who really didn't support her like that. Black people didn't really support her like that either. And in July 1934, she performed for a NAACP benefit. Listen to what the Baltimore Afro-American newspaper had to say. And I'm basically just going to summarize and put it into layman's terms. But basically what they said was, little Esther had too much art and finesse to bring people to spontaneous applause when she performed last night. She's done all that traveling all over Europe and she has all of these contacts, and her stuff was just a little bit too artistic. But she did do very well with her acrobatics though. Like, what is that supposed to mean? Are you guys trying to say that her performance was too classy? Like, I guess you guys might be trying to say in a way she wasn't black enough with her dance. What is too much art and finesse? But maybe I'm getting it wrong. Maybe that's just the way I'm taking it. Tell me how y'all are taking that, because I didn't really like that. That kind of didn't rub me the right way. Tell me what you guys think. You guys are all smart. Y'all got to be smart because baby y'all sub to me. So, my subs don't play. But anyways, tell me what y'all think about that. But back to the story. After that performance with the NAACP, I think baby Esther did something else with Bill Bojangles Robinson, but she really did not perform anywhere else. It is claimed that her last performance was in 1934 when she was around 12, 13 years old, and then after that, baby Esther disappeared from the face of the earth. Not really. But that is what it seems like. There are absolutely no more records on what she did, what happened to her. In fact, there is something that claimed that she died in 1934, but I just don't believe that. I just don't think that's true. Now, there is one rumor that somebody put out and said that she married a worker from North Carolina, and she did end up settling down and living there. But there was no proof of that. Nobody had any records to show that. So, I dug far, deep, wide, y'all, but I didn't know any family to reach out to. I didn't know anybody to even contact to even try to find out like I do with my other celebrities, because I don't know if she has any descendants. I didn't know who to reach out to. I don't know what happened to her. It's like she simply vanished. It's like she just was no more, and it's really, really weird. I don't know. Oh, and then there's also one more rumor. You know how I said she died, right? Well, one person said that she died in 1934, and another person claimed that she was lynched in 1934. But I don't believe that, because it seems like if she was, that would have made headlines somewhere. And no, I'm not crazy enough to believe that every lynching made the newspaper. No, I am not. But it just seems like somebody would have known that this is baby Esther, or this woman at one time was baby Esther, and now, you guys are lynching her, so I just can't believe that. But it is very, very weird how she just disappeared out of nowhere. And if any of her family is watching this, or if anybody knows, please leave in the comments. We would love to know what happened to baby Esther, because unfortunately, I don't even really know how to end her story, because there's not really an end. But I guess this is it. What I will say though is that baby Esther, in her short period of time of being in the spotlight, she was the spotlight. It wasn't no being in the spotlight. This little baby girl had it. She had stuff that adults didn't. She had stuff that other children only could dream of. Like, the immense talent. And I know I made a big deal out of it during this whole video because I'm telling you, this is what I read. This is what I saw in the newspaper clippings. And I had to translate a lot of them because a lot of European newspapers printed stuff up about her, like French papers and Italian papers and stuff like that, and you had to translate them in order to read them. But they really talked about this girl's talent and the way she performed like she was some type of little black goddess. You know what I'm saying? Like, she was everything. And so, you know, like I said, I couldn't talk enough about her performance and her talents, but this is the Old Hollywood Scandalous tale of Miss Baby Esther. Please like and subscribe and comment. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Hey guys, I wanted to add this at the end because a lot of people always think that one or both of these pictures are of baby or little Esther Jones, and it is not. The first one, the lady in the little black dress, that photo is actually from 2008. That is a Ukrainian cosplayer by the name of Alia Gussie or Alia Gussie. The next photo, the black woman sitting in the chair, that is a photo of just a model, a lady that James Van Der Zee took a picture of in around 1923, 24, somewhere around there. But yes, neither one of these pictures are baby Esther. And of course, I'm pretty sure you guys can see that by now since you've seen the real baby Esther in my video. But I just wanted to make that clear that these pictures are false. This is not baby Esther. All right, y'all. I'll see y'all on the next video.